Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Off Meta Musings, where today we're going to be looking at Slaanesh Sybarites, and I know nothing about them, so I've got a special guest here today. I've got Layla, who you may know better as Mama Slaanesh from the Discord. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Yes. We're looking
Welcome.
at my second favorite Slaanesh faction.
Second favorite Slaanesh faction.
That's true.
So today we're going to do something very similar to what I've done before with my other faction breakdowns. We're going to be looking over Slaanesh Sybarites. We're going to be taking a look at the heroes, and we're going to do this as a two-parter. And next time we're going to look at the rest of the units. So without further ado, let us get going. So, Layla, I'm going to let you lead here because, like I said, Slaanesh is not my forte at all. I mean, it is in Age of Sigmar Warhammer Fantasy, it very much is. I've got a
Mhm.
quite large Demons of Slaanesh army, but I haven't had the opportunity to play anything in Warcry yet, so I'm going to be relying on you on this one.
All right. So here's kind of just an overview of their fighter ability. The reaction Shared Pain, which is also the Slaanesh Demons and
Mm,
the Unmade. It shows up in a few different places. Basically, a reversive counter, the universal faction reaction. So for every hit roll, you allocate 1 damage point, and then for every crit, it's 2. So it makes up for your 3 toughness fighters, since you do have a few of those, because they can kind of not just get Alpha Strike. You also have the Unrivaled Velocity, which is adding 3 to their move on a double, which is great for
very
like
fast.
treasure,
Mm,
especially because it can cancel out that treasure debuff. It's also just good for like you can add on 3 to like 1 move action, so you can kind of move in
mm.
and then attack and get like further than you would
Yeah, I mean,
otherwise.
I'm very much a believer that you have different abilities for different parts of the game, and Unrivaled Velocity is very much not much is happening on turn one ability, so
Mhm.
let's pop this, get to where I need to be, and then we can fight from there.
Yep. Otherwise, the faction leader double is it shows up everywhere. It's just if they take down a fighter, they can move or attack again.
Something about Shared Pain. So I kind of theory hammered out a list, and I think you did as well based on that. It was just a lot of Blissbrew
Mhm.
Homunculus.
Mm.
Because the homunculus itself isn't going to be doing all that much damage, but if you can kind of gum up the board with it, run into things, and then get hit to do damage back, it might be a playstyle that works. I don't know
Mm.
yet.
Yeah, it might be something. I think the big problem is I know you had like the OCR counter
Mm,
control list, and the thing there is that when you are dealing damage with counter, you are not getting hit.
yes,
But these guys are getting destroyed.
that's true.
But you might do more damage overall just because they're rolling a lot of successes,
Yes.
hopefully.
No,
So
I think you do
it's
do more damage.
it's a very kind of contrary play style
Mm.
to where you're kind of running in your guys to almost be like little bombs
Yeah,
to
not normally you don't want your guys to die, but with this you kind of say, okay, sure, fight me.
it might work really well for treasure missions,
Yeah.
honestly, if you can just kind of gum up people and then yeah.
Well, doesn't who is it? Sylvaneth. Sylvaneth have the same ability, right?
Yep.
And I played against them quite a bit, and I've been hurt by that.
Oh yeah, I've definitely taken down some
Mm.
fighters with the reaction.
So yeah,
Yeah.
maybe at some point in the future we'll see we'll see a topping a shared pain, shared pain
But,
warrior.
yeah, but other than that, they're pretty mid-range, middle of the pack is what I would say overall. They don't really have, like, a whole lot of really big, heavy elite
Mm.
units. They do have the Blissbrew Homunculus, but other than that, they don't really have a lot of cheap spammable chaff, or even with the Homunculus, they
Yeah.
don't have a lot of cohesion
Mm.
with their chaff, like something like Soul Blight or even like Skaven might have. So they're very much just kind of that 100 to 200 points range of models.
Mm.
Kind of not really good at any of the specializations that I think with Warcry, but they are pretty well rounded.
Sure, they can do a bit of everything. So should we move on to the heroes?
Yeah, so these I don't think are these the best or are these the
These are the good ones, as in,
these are the decent.
yeah,
I think
you're not
these are
going to
the
be shooting
decent
yourself in the
ones.
foot for taking either of these.
Yeah, so the Ego Pump and the Myrmidesh are here because they're your budget heroes. They're fairly comparable to most of the standard Warcry box
Yeah,
bespoke warband heroes.
you'll see a lot of that. You'll see a lot of 160, 170 point heroes, just like
Mhm.
a solid stat block that can kind of do a bit of damage.
The Ego Pump has 5 strength, but I think generally the Myrmidesh Painmaster Hunter is really the better of those two. For a double, he can make himself 3/5 damage, which is pretty insane for a 155 point model that also has 5 toughness.
I really like that toughness 5, but talking about Dance of the Wailing Blade, the super important thing is that it applies to all the attacks that the Pain Master's gonna make. And normally when you look at attacks like this, it's just, oh, then on the next attack, do +1 damage. But this is add 1 damage points until the end of the fighter's activation. So that's really, I think it's really valuable.
Yeah. And he's very cheap as well. He really is like kind of a 180 point model that's just 155 points for some reason.
Effectively, if you look at him and you think his damage isn't 2/4, his damage is always going to be 3/5,
Mhm.
then suddenly you've got a 4/4/3/5 profile, which is actually quite big for 155 points. I've got down here the maths on that. So this is Wailing Blade versus Onslaught, and Wailing Blade just always, it puts out almost 1 point of damage more per attack than Onslaught does, which is really, really good when you consider most chaff units in the game are like 8 wounds. So when you come to one-shotting chaff units with each attack, it suddenly becomes quite nice.
And then we have the Slickblade Hunter Seeker, which is kind of a budget Varen Guard, very cheap. 10-inch move, even mounted 10-inch move is very good. He has the typical triple. If he finishes a move action within one of a fighter, he can deal damage equal to the dice. 2-inch range on him is actually really nice because that means he effectively has a 12-inch threat radius,
Yes.
which is really, really good. He has 4/4/2/4, which is kind of, again, standard, not amazing damage, but not the worst. The only thing that I really don't like about him is the 3 toughness.
Yeah, it's pretty
I think
bad.
it can be a little bit difficult to get him to survive for as long as you want. But he does have 25 wounds, which is pretty hard to just burst down unless they're expending some serious resources
Yeah.
on him.
I mean, no one's going to be
So,
able to one-shot him really
yeah.
with those 25 wounds. So I think as like a fast treasure carrier, he's pretty good.
Yep.
The extra bunch of wounds over the rest of the cavalry that he
Mhm.
has, I think
Really
that
helps.
that really helps him. Yeah, and 205 points, it's kind of
Yeah.
expensive, but not really
Yeah.
when you come to think about it. So yeah, I think as a
Yeah,
fast
it's a
treasure
good.
carrier who can kind of do some damage, it's not bad. He's comparable to the Dreadblade Harrow, I think, has the exact same
Oh, yeah.
stat profile as him. So it's 4/4/2/4 in terms of damaging. The only difference between the Harrow and him is that the Harrow's got toughness 4, and I think a couple more
Right.
wounds. But he's, what, 30 points cheaper than the Dreadblade Harrow? Now, I know the Harrow has
Yeah.
teleport, but in terms of stats, if you're not playing a treasure mission, then effectively they're the same model.
Yeah, true. And I like him as a flanker too, so being able to surprise out of position
Yeah,
units and run in with that spear charge and then finish him off.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's
So
pretty good.
yep, all of these are very, they're serviceable. They're not necessarily best in show, but they're all like they'll get the job done.
You're not
Yeah.
giving up massive things if you do want to include one in your warband. They're not the best, but they'll do it. They'll do what you need. Unlike these guys.
Yep. So there's kind of a split in the community between I've seen some people who really, really like their mounted archers.
Okay.
I think it's just such a bad return on investment
They
when you
pay
have
a
a
fortune.
unit.
They pay a fortune for it.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
attack isn't even all that good.
No, it's really bad. It's a really bad attack. I think it's the exact same as the archers, which are
Sure.
almost half as expensive.
Yeah.
So you're paying for a bunch of wounds on a unit that should never be in melee combat, and you're paying for speed on a unit that already has a 15-inch range.
Yes. Like
So, yeah.
I kind of understand. So, in terms of like the kind of niche they were going for, I would understand if it had a really good but short-ranged shooting attack, so then it would need that mobility to get around and do things, and I think that would make it a
Right.
very interesting choice. But yeah, with 15-inch range, your normal 4 or 5-inch move is fine. It gets you pretty much all the way across the board.
But yeah, and then the other one, the Hell Reaver with Claw Spear. This was actually like a very decent option in Warcry 1.0, where he was a 4/4/2/4. They lowered his cost, but they also made him a leader model without a utility ability
Sure.
that has a 4/4/1/4 damage. He has 4 toughness. That's about the only good thing that I can say for him over the Slickblade Hunter Seeker. But like, yeah, don't take this chump.
Oh well. Next up, so between us, we're split on the Slake-Horn versus the Lord of Pain.
I think so.
I think we are, yeah. So
Okay.
there's no competition. The Slake-Horn is amazing. We can
Yes.
we can both agree on that. It's
Yes.
got the best overall stat line. It's got great damage. 225 points is not a lot of points
No,
to pay
not
at
for
all.
this model.
No,
It's a monster in combat. Like,
it
this
is.
thing should easily be taking down fighters much stronger than it.
Yes, I mean, and it can if it gets 2 attacks off and it's just going to
Yep.
maybe use a double to get an extra attack. It's going to be
And
chewing it
yeah,
off.
and it has the double that lets it get basically a free move action, so it's very good at getting 2 attacks off
Yep.
every combat.
Exactly. But the reason why I like the Lord of Pain, I'll tell you why I like
Okay.
the Lord of Pain, and it's to do with its base damage without using any dice.
Right. Okay.
Because it's strength 5, it's going to be wounding on 3s a whole lot more of a time than the Slake-Horn is. And
It's
I've
true.
got the damage numbers down there. The Lord of Pain is sitting at 9.6 average damage on
Mhm.
an attack versus the Slake-Horn's 8.3. Now, I'm a bit wary of fighters who we look at the average damage and we see 8 points of damage, because what it basically means when you're playing your game is that you think to yourself, well, I can run into this skeleton and I can kill this
Oh,
skeleton,
yeah.
and I will kill this skeleton because I do 8 points of damage average. And it's what I like to call the Varangard trap, where you look at the Varangard's damage profile and you
Yeah.
think, okay, this is going to kill my skeleton, then I'm going to use my triple, and I'm going to get my free onslaught, and then you end up not killing the skeleton, and then it ends up failing on you.
Right.
That's why I really like the Lord of Pain's 9.6 damage, because on average it's going to round up to 10, which means you got a really good chance of killing those 8 wound models and maybe one-shotting 10 wounds chaff models. And that's the
Yeah.
only reason why I really like it.
I think the 4-inch move is a big hang-up for me on this model for sure. The Slake-Horn has 8 inches of threat radius versus Lord of Pain is 6.
Yeah,
That's before you even count in the double. I mean, I think they're both fine. You
yeah,
can really make an argument for either one. It kind of just depends on what you think that you're going to be facing too.
exactly.
Um,
Now,
if you're facing a bunch of Hunters of Quan Chi
mm,
or Slaanesh demons, even any of those typically 3 toughness warbands
mm,
like the Slangor.
yeah, exactly. So if you feel like you're going to be facing toughness 4 chaff models, Lord of Pain, I would say is a better option. I don't really think that the movement 4 is so much of a downside. I mean, on the first turn, hopefully if you play your deployment groups right, on the first turn he's going to turn up anyway, get into position with the Slaanesh double,
Yeah.
and then he's basically 4 or 6 inches away from whatever you need to get. But
Hmm.
yeah, mostly Slake-Horn, take him. But if you feel like
It can also be yeah, it can also be a play style thing. I know particularly I tend to, especially on objective missions, I tend to like to blitz down victory points on the first and second round
Sure.
and then kind of concede ground very
Okay.
gracefully for like the next 2. I play in a way where like I'll get like a 1 to 2 victory point lead in the first
And try
round
and hold
and
on
then
to
just
that.
kind of play to hold that for the
Sure.
rest of the game. So having the faster fighters, but again, that's kind of a play style
Yeah,
thing, and I
personal
think
preference.
yeah,
All
personal
right.
preference.
Good
Which
stuff.
model you think is cooler is probably also, pretty
Sure.
valid.
I quite like the Lord of Pain. I think he's funky,
Mhm.
but that might
Sure.
just be me.
Yeah, he's got like the interesting headpiece is really
Exactly.
cool
You gotta
on
have a
him,
big hat
honestly.
when you're playing Slaanesh.
Yeah, I feel like he could probably stab someone with that too.
Well, that's where the extra point of strength comes from, obviously.
Oh yeah, obviously.
Right. So moving on, we have middle of the road units. So this is kind of champions that aren't necessarily the best,
Yeah.
but they might bring some kind of interesting utility
Mhm.
to your games.
Yep, kind of just the like oddballs, like the 2 odd ones out, really.
We've got the High Tempter here.
Yep, High Tempter. There is some argument for having kind of a ranged threat in a warband, especially one that maybe lacks target access otherwise. And she's okay at that. Really, I'm not super thrilled about this fighter.
Sure.
I think she's a pretty decent range support leader for fairly cheap, but she's squishy and doesn't do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And she's one of your cheaper leader options,
Mm.
though. So that is also a potential thing. She has a triple that combos with the homunculus as well, but it's kind of underwhelming. I think it just gives her an extra point of strength and then 2 extra attack.
You can finish off someone with that, most
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
But her basic
Um,
damage is not
mhm,
all that great without
yeah,
it. So the question is, are you going to be bringing the archer with the
right.
homunculus just on the off chance that you need to kill a guy at range?
And I'm not super big on ranged units
Mhm.
generally in Warcry, especially currently, but if you do want one, I think that you can take it without feeling too embarrassed. The Shard Speaker is actually pretty good. It is your cheapest leader option, I do believe.
Mhm.
It is really cheap, 120, so you can fit a lot more things in your warband around it, and that's just a very good support disruptive unit with that Tendrils of Unnatural Smoke ability.
Yeah, I get a
Infernal
lot of
and
range.
Rapturous does have it on a double, but that's then an ally that you have to bring in that's also 165 points, so you're
Right.
paying 45 more
Mhm.
points.
I think as a triple, I actually don't think it's all that bad. Your basic guy in Warcry is going to be swinging with 3 or 4 attacks. So
Mhm.
if you can down that to 2 or 3, it kind of it really chops into the amount of damage that things can do to you. And 6 inches,
Oh, yeah.
it's a long way in Warcry.
Yep.
So
Very long
big
way.
old 12-inch bubble on the board. If you manage to get the shard speaker, say, in a centralish position, you can probably cover 2 or 3 objectives fairly easily with its ability. It's not one of the obvious choices. Generally, when you're looking at
Yeah.
champions, it's like, oh, this thing does a ton of damage, so I'm going to take this.
Yep.
But I kind of like, I've always had a soft spot for like the utility heroes because they allow you to do like weird,
Yeah.
interesting things with your
They can also
with
be
your board.
interesting allies, I think, as well.
Yeah, most definitely. Especially one that's
But
not
yeah.
super cheap and still has the Slaanesh double, so it can get places
Mhm.
where it needs to. Maybe go and grab
Yep.
an objective or grab a piece of treasure or something.
And I would take her if I was gonna take her specifically, I would take her alongside a lot of the toughness 5
Oh
Mirmadesh.
yeah,
That's gonna be a huge wall.
for sure, for sure. So that's it for the heroes from the Slaanesh Sybarites. Hopefully, we've given you something to think about. We will be back next time with the rest of the units in faction, so keep an eye open for that video. And in the meanwhile, if you like what you see and you want more faction breakdowns, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know. Let me know if we are completely wrong on some of these hero choices. It's quite possible. If there are any heroes that you like to use, and if there are any interesting little combos with those heroes that you use in your games and that you'd like to see us speak about.
If
Yeah,
anyone
that's
has had success with a pure archer
pure
list, please
archers.
let me know
Sure.
right away.
That'll be it from us, and we'll be back next time.